Hey guys. Tonight we slip quietly into the silvery folds of a moonbeam and follow it to a time where gods still strolled through clouds and shepherds dozed under fig trees. You're standing on a ridge somewhere in ancient Caria, modern-day Turkey if your GPS still works in dreams. The air is thick with lavender and cypress. And just below, a sleeping man lies so still you'd think time forgot him. Spoiler, in a way, it did. Welcome to the moment Selene, the goddess of the moon, first saw Endymion. A mortal so absurdly beautiful. Even Olympus collectively raised an eyebrow. You might be wondering, did the moon just fall in love? Yes, she did. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tread softly down the slope of Mount Latmos, where the wind whispers like a lullaby and the stars above are all angled just so, as if pausing to admire the scene unfolding below. Selene, clad in shimmering robes the color of fresh cream under moonlight, rides her chariot across the night sky. She should be focused, she has a job, but instead, she pauses. There's a shepherd sleeping on a hill, and his face is angled just right to catch her gaze. This isn't a casual glance. It's one of those full-stop moments. You know, the kind where a divine being slams on the emotional brakes and mutters something ancient Greek and poetic under her breath. Maybe something like, "Eros, you little menace, not again." Endymion, blissfully unaware of the lunar surveillance, continues to nap, chest rising and falling slowly under a thin wool blanket. Some say he was a prince. Others say a common shepherd. One obscure tale claims he was an astronomer so obsessed with charting the moon that the moon decided to chart him right back. Scholars still argue whether his true role was regal, rustic, or nerdy romantic. What isn't debated is Selene's immediate fascination, not just with his face, although let's not pretend that wasn't a factor, but with the stillness around him. You feel it too. There's a hush here, like the world paused to inhale. And perhaps it did. You step closer, past olive branches slick with dew, and watch as Selene descends. She doesn't crash down with trumpets and lightning like her flashier relatives. No, she floats like a sigh, a soft hush settling over the field. Her chariot, pulled by twin silver horses, waits quietly on the edge of a cloud. She stands beside Endymion and tilts her head. There's something amusing in her gaze, maybe disbelief. This mortal, she seems to say, has no idea he's causing a lunar traffic jam. She watches him sleep for longer than is strictly polite. Then, because moon goddesses have privileges, she kneels. Not to wake him, not yet, just to look. It's possible she whispered something then. A blessing, a promise, or just the word, mine. Barely a breath on the wind. You settle into the grass nearby, careful not to disturb the moment. Around you, night insects hum in soft harmony. A sleepy owl blinks once and decides you're not worth the effort. The moon inches forward in the sky, reluctant to leave. Here's the funny thing. This wasn't a one-time affair. This, Selene watching, Endymion dreaming, became the moon's new routine. Night after night, she returned. Other gods noticed. A few whispered. One or two laughed. Apollo, never subtle, suggested she was going through a mortal phase. Hera, predictably, rolled her eyes. Artemis might have offered a sympathetic nod. She knew a thing or two about silent moonlit yearning. Even Zeus raised an eyebrow, though that's rich coming from him. Selene, unbothered, kept visiting. Her sisters, Eos, Dawn, and Helios, Sun, tried to stage a small intervention. He's asleep, Selene, Eos likely said between yawns. This isn't a relationship, it's, what, lunar people watching, but Selene just smiled in that serene, maddeningly calm way moon goddesses do, because you can't explain moonlight to sunlight. Now here's the quirky bit. On some nights, Selene didn't just look. She shaped the dreams that floated behind Endymion's closed eyes. Gently, no jump scares or flaming chariots. Just images of glowing rivers, slow-moving deer, and warm figs ripening on the branch. She wrapped his sleep in soft silver ribbons, dreaming for two. And this is where things get stranger, because mortals, they noticed. Shepherds passing nearby would say the air smelled sweeter at night. Travelers felt unreasonably calm. Someone swore the goats began producing milk with a faint shimmer. Scholars still argue whether this was literal moon magic or just a really good PR campaign from the stars. You settle deeper into the scene. Selene rises again, reluctantly, as if torn between duty and desire. Her chariot horses snort softly, their breath curling like silver mist. She glides upward, casting one last look back. And you swear she murmurs a promise to return. And she does. Every night. You let the image linger. A sleeping man under olive trees. A goddess pausing overhead, and a world briefly hushed into stillness. By now, you've probably figured out Selene isn't just showing up for some casual moon strolls. Nope. This is goddess-level infatuation. And while you might think this story is headed toward a classic mortal meets divine soap opera, what comes next is less about wild declarations and more about devotion drawn out over infinite nights. Quiet, unchanging, almost eternal. Tonight, the air around Mount Latmos feels warmer, thicker, like the night is holding its breath. You're tucked between some sweet-smelling myrtle and a particularly bossy cricket. And just ahead, you see Selene's chariot touch down again. She's not wearing her usual flowing silver gown. This time, her robes are more subdued, like she's dressing down to meet a dream. Endymion is still asleep. That's part of the deal. Now, here's where things start to get a bit divine weird. Selene wants more time, not more nights. She has those already. She wants to preserve the moment forever. Keep Endymion exactly as he is, young, beautiful, undisturbed by the demands of aging or waking. So she does what any powerful immortal with complicated feelings might do. She petitions Zeus. Now Zeus, the king of the gods, is no stranger to unusual love stories. He basically invented the genre. But Selene's request is different. She doesn't ask for Endymion to be made a god. She doesn't even ask for him to wake up and fall in love with her. What she asks for is this: eternal sleep. A sleep so perfect, so untouched by time, that he remains as he is, forever. You can almost imagine the expression on Zeus's face. Scholars still argue whether Selene truly asked for this sleep, or whether Zeus imposed it to keep her distracted and out of celestial politics. But the myth says what it says: Zeus grants the wish. And just like that, Endymion's slumber deepens. He no longer stirs when the wind brushes his cheek, no longer shifts when a twig snaps nearby. It's not death, not exactly. It's sleep at its most profound, timeless, dreamful, and undisturbed. A divine pause button. Selene returns the next night and finds him just the same. Her heart, if goddesses have such things, catches in her chest. You can feel the ache and the awe tangled together in her silence. She leans down, touches his brow, and this time, she speaks, not a whisper, words. Mine. It's not possessive in the creepy sense. It's more like a lullaby wrapped in a claim. A love that doesn't need answers or responses. Just presence. And now, with Endymion's fate sealed, Selene's nightly visits become a sacred ritual. She brings him gifts, bowls of fresh milk and honey, garlands of moon-kissed flowers, the occasional feather from a starlit owl. Once, she even lays a tiny silver lyre beside him, just in case dreams need music. Remember that lyre lulling trees from earlier? That was one of her better gifts. She didn't get it back, either. The forest stole it. As the months pass, maybe years, maybe centuries, who knows how gods keep track, rumors spread across Greece. Mortal shepherds speak in hushed tones about the goddess who fell for a sleeping man. Some believe it's just myth. Others claim to have seen her, a white-gowned woman standing over a still figure, bathed in soft glow. They call Endymion, the man who sleeps beneath the moon. And here's where we get another fun scholarly fork in the road. Was Endymion actually buried inside a cave on Mount Latmos? Some ancient sources say yes, and that the cave is sacred. Hidden from sight, watched over by silver-winged doves and misty spirits. Others say no cave existed at all, that he lay openly under the stars. You picture both as you walk, one hidden, womb-like and secret, the other, proud and poetic, a mortal offered to the sky. Selene doesn't seem to care which version the poets choose. She's living her own truth, one moonbeam at a time. Now, here comes your quirky tidbit of the night. There's an old Greek saying that sleeping soundly, like Endymion, is the best kind of sleep. It's a phrase tucked away in weathered texts and occasionally muttered by overworked farmers during harvest season. "I need an Endymion nap," they'd sigh, probably collapsing into straw piles. Back in your scene, Selene sits beside Endymion, her presence now a natural part of the night. Animals don't startle when she arrives. The grass doesn't bend too sharply beneath her feet. Even the stars seem to twinkle more quietly. You watch as she leans close, not touching, just watching, and you wonder what she sees. The same face every night? Or the man behind it? The one she imagines speaking in dreams? She begins to talk now. And you realize she's been doing this for centuries. Her voice is soft, almost wind-like, and she tells Endymion about everything. The rise and fall of empires. The day Poseidon flooded a valley out of boredom. That one time Aphrodite tried bangs. She talks about light and shadow. About constellations she's painted across the sky just for him. And he listens. Maybe that's the beauty of sleep. You can't argue back. You lie beside a crooked olive tree, letting her words drift over you like mist. It's oddly comforting, a goddess spilling stories into the night like secrets. Then, one night, she says something different. You would have laughed at this. "You know," she murmurs, brushing a curl from his forehead. "The way mortals romanticize us. As if we're any better at this than they are." That lands with a soft thud in your chest. Because she's right. Gods fall in love, get confused, make poor choices, and whisper into the dark just like anyone else. You start to wonder, does Endymion dream of her too? There's no answer, just the rhythmic sound of breathing and the soft rustle of the night around them both. Selene rises, but before leaving, she kisses his brow, and maybe, just maybe, his lips curl into the faintest smile. You can't be sure, but Selene saw it, and that's enough. You don't expect things to change. Honestly, by now, the nightly rhythm of Selene and Endymion feels as inevitable as the moonrise itself, gentle, predictable, oddly cozy, but change always tiptoes in when you're least prepared. And it does so here in the form of a question that's been sleeping right alongside Endymion all this time. What now? Because Selene isn't just visiting anymore, she's yearning. The kind of yearning that aches even in the bones of gods. You watch her pace beside him one evening, robes trailing over wild thyme, a hint of frustration in her usually serene eyes. She wants more than presence. She wants connection, interaction, maybe even, dare we say it, a future. And this is where things start to stir. Now, you may be wondering, how can a love story move forward when one half of the couple is permanently snoozing? Classic Greek mythology answer: divine loopholes. The myths, plural, because Greek stories love variety, offer a few interpretations here. One tells that Selene, so overcome with love, leans into that eternal sleep beside Endymion and whispers dreams into his slumber. And somehow, between the folds of time and divine magic, he answers, not aloud, but with dreams of his own, lucid, intimate, shaped by her presence. Another version says the gods allowed Selene brief moments of shared sleep. Slipping into his dreaming world like a silver echo, the two would walk together in that space, his meadow transformed. The stars bending low, their hands finally brushing, a romance that lived in dreams and shadows. You probably won't survive that level of cosmic softness. Honestly, it's like someone took all the tragic poetry in the world and poured it into a moonbeam. So they meet, night after night, within the hazy world of dreams. Not always with words, sometimes just feelings, memories, Or shared stillness. Imagine strolling hand in hand through a field of blooming narcissus where each flower sings quietly and off-key. And Selene just raises an eyebrow like, "You picked this landscape." Their love becomes something uniquely theirs. Beyond physical, beyond time, a love story scribbled between reality and myth, written in stardust instead of ink. And yet, even in dreams, Endymion is still mortal. Which brings us to a quiet twist. Selene begins to change. Now, mainstream mythological fact here, Selene is traditionally considered the personification of the moon itself. Not just goddess of, she is the moon, the luminous orb in the sky. That's her face, her essence. So when she begins to shift, glow softer, linger longer in the night, it doesn't go unnoticed. The tides feel it, so do the wolves, the poets, and anyone with a strong attachment to moonlight. She's becoming gentler, almost fragile, in the divine sense. Quirky detail for the lore lovers. Some obscure fragments of poetry claim Selene began to dim during her visits to Endymion, as if leaving a little of herself behind each time she kissed him goodnight. Like moonlight draining into his dreams. You watch her one night, and it's true, she seems lighter, more translucent, like mist caught in moonbeams. Her chariot glides slower, her silver crown shines dimmer, but her smile, that deepens, because with each visit, she feels more real. And here's where the ancient myths throw us a curveball, because surprise. In some versions, Selene doesn't just stay a visitor, she becomes a mother. Yep, depending on who you ask. Selene and Endymion have 50 children. 50, that's not a typo, the number might be symbolic, a representation of the 50 lunar months in the Olympiad cycle, but still. 50 celestial offspring from a goddess and a man who doesn't wake up to change diapers. It's a little unclear how this works. But myth logic doesn't really play by earthly biology. Scholars still argue whether these children were born in dreams, conjured from magic, or simply metaphors for the moon's phases and celestial light. Either way, the children are said to be radiant, wise, and oddly quiet, which makes sense given their father's favorite pastime. Their most famous child, a daughter named Naxos, sometimes linked to the Greek island of the same name. She's described as reflective and strong, with eyes like polished silver and a voice that could calm storms. Definitely her mother's kid. Back on Mount Latmos, you can imagine the children playing in secret glades, their laughter rippling like water over smooth stones. Selene watches them from afar, pride and sorrow braided together in her gaze. Endymion never meets them, not fully, but Selene tells him about them every night, in detail. You'd love how Eurythia arranges flowers by moon phase. She murmurs. And Callion, he's already sculpting stars out of clouds. Endymion, as always, listens. You get the sense Selene could have asked for more. She could have demanded his awakening, could have bargained with Hades for a second fate. But instead, she respects the stillness. She builds her life around it, around him, and in doing so, she becomes a myth not of tragedy, but of peace, of choosing devotion over drama, of finding fulfillment in the quiet kind of love, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to be known. Still, every once in a while, Selene will sit beside him, rest her head on his chest, and whisper, "If you ever wake up, I hope you like moonlight." And somewhere inside the depths of his sleep, you imagine Endymion smiles again. Somewhere along the marble hush of time, it starts to feel like this could be the end of the story. You've got Selene, goddess of the moon, drifting through centuries with her immortal devotion. You've got Endymion, the sleeping shepherd whose heartbeat still echoes with dreams of silver. And you've got 50 lunar children who, let's be honest, probably need a family planner and a group chat. It's quiet, it's soft, it's eternal. But Greek myths don't like to leave things that simple. Eternity has a way of pressing questions into your hands like folded notes. And for Selene, the unasked question starts to glow brighter than the moon herself. Is this truly enough? You see it one evening. Selene lingers just a moment too long after one of her nightly visits. The moon hangs motionless above Mount Latmos. casting a gentle milk glow over Endymion's face. He hasn't changed, not in centuries, still as youthful as the first time her chariot coasted across the sky and caught him sleeping. But Selene, she's restless. And here's where the scholars get in each other's way. Some argue that Selene was content forever. Others whisper of a single, forgotten night when she did something unthinkable. She asks Zeus to reverse it. Now, remember, Zeus is the one who granted Endymion eternal sleep in the first place. Why? That's a whole other debate. Some say it was at Endymion's own request, so he could remain forever young. Others claim Zeus offered it as a favor to Selene, to preserve her beloved from the decay of time. And some suggest, brace yourself for some divine pettiness, it was a curse wrapped in velvet, meant to punish Selene for falling in love with a mortal in the first place. Because, yes, even moon goddesses don't get a free pass in the heavenly soap opera that is Mount Olympus. But back to Selene. One version says that, just once, she broke her nightly pattern. Instead of descending silently to the mountain, she ascended to Olympus, wind billowing in her celestial robe, eyes full of that rare mix of fury and heartbreak. "I want him awake," she said. And Zeus, he just chuckled. "Oh, you don't," he told her. "You want him perfect, and nothing's more perfect than a man who never talks back." Ouch. Selene didn't argue, she never did with Zeus. Instead, she left, more moonlight than goddess that night. Back on Earth, she didn't return to Endymion right away. For the first time in an age, the moon skipped a night. Or maybe it was just clouded over. Either way, the creatures of the forest noticed. The sea tides pulled a little awkwardly. Lovers glanced nervously at one another, unsure why their hearts felt offbeat. And Endymion, he dreamed darker dreams. It's here that your empathy flickers between them. You feel for Selene, torn between devotion and longing for something fuller, louder, more alive. But you also feel for Endymion, caught in a wish granted too well. A man blessed to be untouched by time, and cursed to sleep through it. So Selene returns. Of course she does. Not with fanfare, no lightning bolts, no Olympian bargains, just a soft return to the grove. The night air swells like breath held too long. She sits beside him again, as she always has, but something in her is different. Softer, yes, but also stronger. She leans in, brushes his cheek, and says, "You don't need to wake up. I just needed to know I could ask." This is the core of love that even myths forget to mention. Not sacrifice, not possession, but the space to wonder, and still stay. Here's a quirky footnote for you. An ancient mosaic found in southern Italy shows Selene not just visiting Endymion, but sleeping beside him, both under a curtain of stars. Scholars have puzzled over this. Why depict the goddess as vulnerable? Why paint her with her head on his shoulder? Some say it's a visual metaphor for surrender. Others suggest it was meant to depict balance, divinity and humanity sharing one breath. A reminder that even celestial beings need to rest their hearts sometimes. And maybe that's the final shape this myth takes, not just love, but stillness, a love that chooses to exist quietly, without fireworks, without conclusions, just presence, just peace. You picture Selene again, her silver chariot waiting in the shadows. She hasn't stepped into it yet. She's still beside him. The grove around them pulses gently with nocturnal life. An owl blinks from a cedar branch. Crickets stitch the silence into song. "Did I tell you," she murmurs, "that the stars wrote your name last night?" Endymion doesn't stir, but a breeze flutters the grass near his hand. Maybe that's answer enough. And now, the gods mostly leave her alone. Even the ever-meddling Zeus looks away. Perhaps even he, king of chaos and thunder, understands that some stories don't need dramatic endings. That some myths thrive not because they dazzle, but because they soothe. Night after night, Selene returns. She brings news from the stars. Updates on their children. Odd jokes whispered into the wind. Sometimes she simply sits, watches the slow rise and fall of his chest, smiles at the quiet rhythm of a love that no longer asks for anything more. And if, On rare nights, you find yourself dreaming of moonlight pooling in your room, or silver laughter curling at the edge of your sleep. It might be her. Still visiting, still loving, still choosing peace. You're still here, still floating with Selene under the hush of the stars. By now, the sky feels familiar, soft-edged and humming with memory. Each constellation seems to lean a little closer, as if eavesdropping on something sacred. And down below, nestled in the cradle of Mount Latmos, Endymion sleeps like the world never changed. But stories, even the gentlest ones, always ripple outward. So tonight, let's follow one ripple, a quiet curiosity that begins in the hearts of Selene and her 50 daughters. Yes, 50. You'd think immortals might discover birth control. But no, the moon has never been particularly concerned with moderation. These daughters, lunar in blood and light-footed as dreams, scatter across the world. Some become priestesses, whispering secrets in wind-swept temples. Others fade into myth, like mist retreating before dawn. But a few, just a few, seek out the place where their father sleeps. It's said one child, known only as Thalia, visits Mount Latmos when the moon is at its thinnest, barely a silver thread in the sky. She kneels by her father's side and hums lullabies she doesn't remember learning. And though he never opens his eyes, something in the forest shifts when she sings. Leaves tilt toward her. Owls blink slower, even the stars seem to pause. Some traditions believe that Thalia inherited Selene's gift for prophecy. Others say she is the patron spirit of calm nights and safe dreams. There's no consensus. Scholars, naturally, argue over whether she even existed, or if she's just an anthropomorphic metaphor for the waxing moon. But there's something warm in the idea, isn't there, that this story doesn't just end with sleep, but continues through generations of twilight, of love passed down not in fire, but in moonlight. And Selene, she begins to change too. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gradually. The stories place her less in her chariot and more in the sky itself. She becomes the moon, not just its driver. A transformation of myth into nature. From goddess to guardian, you no longer picture her steering 4 white horses across the black velvet dome. Now, she is the dome, watching over dreams, smiling through clouds, weeping quietly during eclipses, when her view of Endymion fades for just a while. There's a poetic irony here. Selene, the ever-present observer, is forever watching the one man who never watches back. But maybe that's the point. Maybe true love isn't about being seen, it's about being there. Without condition, without performance. Think about it. How many stories do you know where a woman gives up everything for love? But here, Selene doesn't give anything up, she chooses. She keeps her place in the heavens. Her strength, her solitude, and still, she loves, fiercely, quietly, without needing to be loved in return in any conventional sense. That's not tragedy, that's clarity, and maybe that's why this myth lingers, long after the details blur. Not because it's filled with action or vengeance or betrayal, those a dime a dozen in Olympus. But because it dares to slow down, it dares to let a love story be soft, and still count. Of course, there are versions that try to mess this up. One obscure Roman text says that Endymion did wake briefly, saw Selene, and asked, "Who are you?" So unbothered, so male. He then rolled over and went back to sleep. Rude. But that version doesn't stick. You and I know why. It doesn't feel right, because in your heart, you already feel the rhythm of this myth, the quiet pulse, the breathing silence, the nightly return. And you know, somewhere in your soul, that Selene would never need him to speak to be understood. Here's one final quirky tidbit to pocket before we rest. In some old calendars, people avoided planting crops during the days when the moon hid, what we now call the new moon phase. They said Selene was mourning, and to disturb the soil during her grief would risk losing the harvest. And you think, isn't it beautiful, how even absence was seen as sacred? So let's return, one last time, to Mount Latmos. The night is velvet thick. The stars blink like drowsy eyes. A single breeze passes through the trees. rustling as if carrying words too old to translate. And there, in the clearing, is Selene, no longer descending, no longer arriving, but simply existing. She lays beside him, doesn't speak, doesn't move, just listens to the silence between them. You wonder if, maybe, that's the truest form of closeness, to be beside someone and not need to fill the space. To be held by presence alone. And somewhere, a shepherd dreams. And now, as the final threads of this story soften into the dark, let your thoughts settle like petals floating to still water. The moon still glows quietly outside, casting gentle shadows against your walls. You might imagine Selene watching, not from afar, but from just above your ceiling, smiling at the smallness of your sleep compared to her endless love. Let the weight in your body drop a little deeper, the muscles in your face, your shoulders, your hands, let them melt down. There's no more story to follow, no more path to walk. Just this moment, suspended like dew in starlight. Think of the grove on Mount Latmos, where time stopped not because it had to, but because it was enough. Picture the pale silver breath of a goddess lying beside a sleeping shepherd. Both untouched by urgency, no questions left, no endings needed, just a night that continues. Like this one, quiet and slow and kind. Let your breathing match that rhythm. In and out, no pressure, just presence, like the moonlight on your pillow. Whatever world waits for you tomorrow, it can wait a little longer. Tonight, you rest in the care of myths older than memory, softer than sleep. Selene is still watching, and so is the sky. End of script. Sweet dreams.